I am Samantha, 29 years old, and I have always been the invisible sister. As a private accountant, I built my success quietly, while my brother Tyler basked in our parents' endless praise. When he invited me to his housewarming party, I wore my usual jeans and simple blouse, hiding the fact that my net worth was triple his. I never expected that night would expose everything I had worked so hard to keep private. Before I tell you what happened at that housewarming party that changed everything between us, drop a comment telling me where you are watching from and hit that subscribe button if you have ever had to deal with competitive siblings. Growing up with Tyler was like living in a constant shadow. 3 years older than me, he was the golden child, the one who brought home perfect report cards and trophies that my parents proudly displayed in our living room cabinet. I still remember how they would beam with pride during parent-teacher conferences for Tyler, then look at me with that subtle disappointment when my teachers said I was doing fine, but could apply myself more. Our parents struggled financially throughout our childhood. Dad worked as a sales manager at a local car dealership, while Mom juggled part-time jobs as a receptionist and weekend caterer. They stretched every dollar to give us decent opportunities, but money was always a touchy subject in our household. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom home in a middle-class neighborhood, and I shared a room with all the sports equipment Tyler had outgrown, but my parents could not bear to throw away. Tyler got a scholarship offer from State University. My mother announced at dinner one evening during my sophomore year of high school. Full ride. Can you believe it? Our son is going to college for free. I nodded and smiled, genuinely happy for my brother, but also feeling that familiar pang of knowing I would never generate that level of excitement from them. When I later received partial scholarships to 3 different colleges, my father simply nodded and said, "That will help with the loans you will need to take out." The pattern continued throughout college. Tyler majored in marketing, joined a fraternity, and became student body vice president. My parents drove 4 hours to attend every event he invited them to. Meanwhile, I worked 2 jobs while studying accounting, rarely seeing my family as I balanced work and school. When I made the dean's list 3 semesters in a row, my mother said, "That is nice, honey," before immediately changing the subject to ask if I had heard about Tyler's summer internship. It was during those college years that I discovered my talent for money management. While other students blew through their financial aid on spring break trips and designer clothes, I meticulously budgeted every cent. I worked as a bank teller on weekdays and waited tables on weekends, saving 70% of everything I earned. By graduation, while most of my classmates were drowning in debt, I had a modest but impressive emergency fund and had already begun researching investment opportunities. I learned early on that sharing my financial successes with my family only led to awkwardness. When I mentioned that I had paid off one of my smaller student loans within 6 months of graduation, my father chuckled and said, "Well, must be nice to have those tiny accountant loans. Your brother had to borrow much more for his business degree." So I stopped sharing. I took a job at a small accounting firm that paid decently and allowed me to continue living below my means. Each month, I funneled money into carefully researched investments. By 24, I had saved enough for a down payment on a small condo, which I immediately rented out for more than the mortgage payment. 6 months later, I purchased another. By 27, I owned 4 rental properties. The 5-bedroom house came next. It was an incredible opportunity in an up-and-coming neighborhood just outside the city. The previous owners had divorced and needed a quick sale, listing it well below market value. The moment I walked through the grand entryway with its sweeping staircase and saw the spacious kitchen with granite countertops, I knew this property would appreciate significantly. I closed on it within 3 weeks. Though I owned this beautiful home, I continued living in my modest 1-bedroom apartment downtown. It was convenient for work, and keeping my living expenses low allowed me to continue building my investment portfolio. Only my Aunt Diana knew the full extent of my financial situation, as she had helped me with some paperwork for my most recent property purchase. Meanwhile, Tyler had graduated and bounced between marketing jobs, always chasing the next big opportunity, but never quite finding stability. He lived in a series of increasingly expensive apartments, drove leased luxury cars, and posted endless photos of expensive restaurant meals on social media. Our parents continued to speak of him with reverent pride, even as I suspected they sometimes helped him with rent when commissions were low. I never resented Tyler for being the favorite. He had a charisma I lacked, a natural ability to command attention and charm everyone around him. What hurt more was the feeling that my achievements would never be recognized simply because they were not as visible or flashy. I worked hard, made smart decisions, and built security for myself, but because I did not broadcast my success, it might as well not have existed. So when Tyler called to invite me to his housewarming party, I already knew how the evening would unfold. He would showcase his new acquisition, our parents would shower him with praise, and I would stand in the corner nursing a glass of wine, smiling politely as relatives asked me when I was going to get serious about my future. What I did not know was that this particular evening would finally break the pattern that had defined our relationship for nearly 3 decades. The call from Tyler came on a Tuesday evening as I was reviewing spreadsheets for a client. His name flashed on my phone screen, and I hesitated before answering. Our conversations typically followed a predictable pattern. He would talk about himself for 20 minutes, ask me one obligatory question about my life, then return to his favorite subject before I could fully answer. "Sammy," he exclaimed when I picked up, using the childhood nickname I had repeatedly asked him to drop. "Guess what your brilliant big brother just did?" "What is that, Tyler?" I asked already, knowing it would be something he considered impressive. "I just signed the lease on the most amazing apartment in Westview Towers. 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a balcony overlooking the park. You would not believe the view." "That sounds really nice," I said, genuinely happy for him. "Congratulations." "It is more than nice, it is spectacular. And get this. I negotiated them down $100 on the monthly rent. That is your accountant's sister's influence right there." I smiled despite myself. "Good job. That adds up over a 12-month lease." "Exactly. So listen, I am having a housewarming party next Saturday. Nothing fancy, just family and some close friends. You should come see how the other half lives, take a break from that little rental of yours downtown." There it was, the subtle dig wrapped in an invitation. Tyler had never visited my apartment, but he referred to it as tiny and little whenever it came up. "I will try to make it," I said, noncommittally. No trying, you are coming. Mom and Dad will be there, Aunt Diana, some cousins. 6 o'clock. Bring a housewarming gift," he laughed. "Nothing cheap, please. This place deserves the best." After we hung up, I sat staring at my financial portfolio on my laptop screen. My net worth was now approaching 7 figures, a milestone I had been working toward since graduation. No one in my family except Aunt Diana had any idea. Sometimes I wondered why I kept it secret, whether it was pride or fear or simply the habit of privacy that had become comfortable over the years. The following Saturday morning, I went shopping for Tyler's housewarming gift. I wanted something thoughtful but not ostentatious. After browsing several stores, I finally settled on a high-quality knife set. Tyler had mentioned wanting to cook more instead of eating out, and though I suspected this ambition would fade like many of his others, it was a useful gift that showed I had been listening. As I was wrapping the gift at home, my phone rang. It was Aunt Diana, my mother's younger sister, and the only adult in my family who had ever shown genuine interest in my life and career. "Samantha, darling, are you going to Tyler's party tonight?" she asked after we exchanged greetings. "Yes, I am planning to stop by." "Good. I have not seen you in weeks, and I want to hear how that new property of yours is doing. The big house with the beautiful backyard, right?" I smiled. Unlike the rest of my family, Diana had actually visited my investment properties. She had been impressed with my financial acumen and kept my confidence about my growing wealth. "The tenants are great," I told her. "They signed a 2-year lease and even asked if they could plant a garden, which is fine with me. Property values in that neighborhood are up 12% already since I bought it." "Smart girl. Always thinking ahead." She paused. "Your parents have no idea, do they? About any of it?" "No," I admitted. "And I would prefer to keep it that way for now." "Your secret is safe with me," Diana assured me. "Though sometimes I think you should let them know. They might look at you differently." "That is exactly what I am afraid of," I said quietly. After hanging up, I spent too long deciding what to wear. I finally settled on dark jeans, a simple blue blouse, and minimal jewelry. I could have afforded designer clothes but preferred classic, understated pieces that did not draw attention. For Tyler's party, I deliberately chose something that would not stand out. The drive to Westview Towers took 20 minutes. It was indeed in an upscale part of town with boutique shops and trendy restaurants lining the streets. I found parking and approached the imposing glass and steel building, feeling the familiar mixture of pride and resignation that accompanied family gatherings. In the elevator, I encountered a couple, also heading to the 6th floor. They were dressed immaculately and carried an expensive-looking bottle of champagne. "Are you going to Tyler Bennett's housewarming too?" the woman asked. I nodded. "We work with him at Apex Marketing. Such a rising star, and now he has this amazing apartment. Have you seen it yet?" "No, this is my first time visiting," I replied. "You are in for a treat. We got a preview last week when he had some colleagues over. The place is gorgeous, and that view, I told my husband we need to start looking at units in this building." The elevator doors opened, and I followed them down the hallway, my gift tucked under my arm. I could hear music and voices coming from apartment 612 growing louder as we approached. I took a deep breath, plastered on my most convincing smile, and knocked on the door. The door swung open to reveal Tyler dressed in a crisp button-down shirt and holding a glass of red wine. Behind him, I could see at least 15 people already mingling in a spacious living room with the promised floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing a stunning view of the city park below. "Sammy," Tyler exclaimed, embracing me with his free arm. "You made it! Come in! Come in! Let me show you how successful people live." And with that casual remark, the evening I had been dreading officially began. Tyler's apartment was admittedly impressive. The open-concept living and dining area featured modern furniture, abstract art on the walls, and those spectacular windows that bathed everything in natural light. A sleek kitchen with stainless steel appliances occupied one corner where several guests were gathered around a spread of catered appetizers. "Nice place," I said, handing Tyler his gift. "Congratulations." "Thanks, sis. Let me give you the 5-cent tour before more people arrive." He glanced at the wrapped package. "What is this? It feels substantial." "Open it later with your other gifts," I suggested, not wanting to make a show of it. Tyler shrugged and placed it on a table, already crowded with presents. He then proceeded to guide me through the apartment, pointing out features as if he were a real estate agent closing a deal. "Brazilian hardwood floors throughout," he announced, gesturing grandly. "Bathroom has heated tiles and a rainfall shower. Second bedroom is my home office, but it could easily be converted if I ever decide to have a family. And check out this smart home system." He pressed a button on his phone and the lights dimmed while blinds lowered halfway across the windows. "Pretty sweet, right?" "Very nice," I agreed. "The rent must be steep." "Worth every penny," he replied dismissively. "When you make good money, you need to live accordingly." Before I could respond, the doorbell rang again. Tyler rushed to greet the new arrivals, and I took the opportunity to get a glass of wine from the kitchen. I recognized several relatives already there, including our cousin Rachel and her husband, who nodded politely in my direction. 20 minutes later, our parents arrived. Mom embraced Tyler emotionally as if she had not seen him in years rather than 2 weeks ago at Sunday dinner. "Oh, Tyler, this place is absolutely beautiful," she gushed, looking around with wide eyes. "I am so proud of you." Dad clapped him on the shoulder. "Moving up in the world, son. This is what hard work gets you." I approached and gave each of them a hug. "Hi, Mom, Dad. Good to see you." "Samantha, there you are," Mom said, as though surprised to find me at the party I had been invited to. "Don't you think your brother's new place is magnificent?" "It is very nice," I agreed, for what felt like the 10th time that evening. "You should ask him for advice on upgrading from that apartment of yours," Dad suggested. "Tyler has always had an eye for quality." I smiled tightly and excused myself to refill my wine glass, though it was still half full. In the kitchen, I encountered Aunt Diana, who was arranging cheese and crackers on a serving platter. "Your brother asked me to help with the food," she explained with a wink. "Apparently his catering order was smaller than he expected." "Of course he did," I chuckled. "Need a hand." Together we organized the appetizers while Diana quietly updated me on her life. She had recently retired from teaching and was considering selling her house to travel more. We discussed potential investment strategies for her retirement funds, keeping our voices low. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "you could be charging good money for this kind of financial advice." I shrugged. I enjoy helping family. "Some family," Diana muttered. glancing toward the living room where Tyler was loudly describing his job promotion to an audience of admiring relatives. The apartment tour resumed after most guests had arrived. Tyler led everyone from room to room, highlighting each upgrade and special feature. I hung back observing the dynamics. Our parents followed directly behind Tyler, exclaiming over every detail. Other relatives and friends formed a procession with appropriate oohs and ahs at each revelation. And this, Tyler announced, throwing open the door to the second bedroom, is where the magic happens. My home office where I closed the Henderson account worth 6 figures to the company. Everyone applauded. I took another sip of wine. When the tour concluded, Tyler's girlfriend Jessica arrived. Tall, blonde, and impeccably dressed in a designer outfit that probably cost more than a month of my mortgage payments, she air-kissed Tyler before turning to greet the assembled guests. "Sorry I am late, everyone," she trilled. "Client meeting ran long. You know how it is when you are indispensable," she laughed musically, and several guests chuckled along with her. Jessica worked in pharmaceutical sales and never failed to mention her company car and expense account. She and Tyler had been dating for 8 months, and they seemed perfect for each other in their shared appreciation for status symbols and public recognition. "Jessica, look who made it," Tyler said, pulling me forward. "My little sister Samantha." Jessica gave me a quick once-over. "Oh, yes, the accountant. How are those spreadsheets treating you?" "Still full of numbers," I replied with a smile. "God, I could never do that. So boring, but I guess someone has to write." She patted my arm condescendingly before turning to greet my parents with considerably more enthusiasm. The next hour passed in a blur of small talk and subtle comparisons. I helped serve food, refilled drinks, and answered the same questions about my job and apartment that I always received at family gatherings. "Still at that small firm downtown. Have you thought about buying instead of renting? Building equity is important. Tyler says the market for financial advisors is booming. Have you considered a career change?" I answered politely, revealing nothing about my actual financial situation. It was a role I had perfected over years of practice, the modest sister with the steady but unimpressive career. I had become so comfortable in this persona that sometimes I almost believed it myself. As evening turned to night, Tyler clinked his glass for attention. "Everyone, dinner is ready. Please find your seats at the table." Jessica and a friend had arranged place settings for 20 people around the dining table and a card table extension. I found my name card between our second cousin Marcus, who was in the middle of a divorce, and one of Tyler's colleagues, whose name I had already forgotten. Our parents were seated at Tyler's right hand with Jessica at his left and Aunt Diana directly across from me 4 seats down. As platters of catered food were passed around, I caught Diana's eye. She raised an eyebrow slightly, as if to ask if I was okay. I gave a small nod in return. This was nothing I had not handled before. I would eat dinner, make appropriate conversation, then excuse myself at the earliest opportunity that would not be considered rude. What I did not anticipate was that Tyler had planned a toast that would change the entire dynamic of the evening. Tyler stood glass, raised, commanding instant attention from everyone at the table. He had always known how to work a room, how to make himself the center of any gathering. I watched him, remembering how even as children he would stand on furniture to ensure all eyes were on him during family events. "First, I want to thank everyone for coming tonight to celebrate this milestone with me," he began, gesturing around the apartment. "As most of you know, I have been working incredibly hard at Apex Marketing, and last month's promotion finally made this dream apartment a reality." Murmurs of approval rippled through the guests. Our father nodded proudly. "This place represents everything I have been working toward. The location, the view, the amenities," Tyler continued. "Not everyone understands the importance of living somewhere that reflects your success." His eyes found mine across the table, and I felt a small knot form in my stomach. I recognized that look from childhood, the one that preceded some public comment designed to elevate himself by diminishing me. "My sister Samantha, for instance," he said, gesturing toward me with his wine glass. "She is still renting that tiny 1-bedroom apartment downtown, living like a college student despite being almost 30. Several guests turned to look at me, expressions ranging from curiosity to pity. The knot in my stomach tightened. "I keep telling her, Sammy, you need to stretch yourself a little. Take some risks." Tyler continued, his tone jovial, but with an edge I recognized all too well. but I guess not everyone can afford a two-bedroom apartment like this one." Laughter erupted around the table. My face grew hot as I maintained a fixed smile, my fingers tightening around my water glass. From the corner of my eye, I could see our parents smiling indulgently at Tyler's joke, as if his mockery was both accurate and amusing. Seriously, though, Tyler pressed on, clearly enjoying the attention. Some people just do not understand investment. Sammy has always been so cautious with money. Remember how she used to save every dollar from her birthday cards, while I would spend mine immediately on cool stuff. She would put it all in that little ceramic piggy bank, our mother added, shaking her head with a fond but dismissive smile, always counting pennies. "That is our Samantha," Dad chimed in. "Never was good with money, too afraid to spend it." More laughter followed. I felt as if I were shrinking in my seat, becoming smaller with each comment. The rational part of my brain reminded me that they had no idea about my actual financial situation, that their perceptions were based on outdated information and assumptions. But emotionally, I was transported back to our childhood dining table, listening to my parents praise Tyler's latest accomplishment, while my own achievements went unnoticed. "Maybe someday she will learn from her big brother Tyler," continued, clearly on a roll now. "I could give you some financial advice, Sammy, help you figure out how to afford a place that does not fit in a shoebox." Jessica giggled beside him. "Tyler is so good with money. He negotiated such a deal on this apartment." My cheeks burned hotter. I took a sip of water, wishing it were something stronger. The humiliation was familiar, but no less painful for its predictability. I had spent years building a life of financial security and independence, only to sit here and be ridiculed for supposed money problems by my brother, who likely spent more than he earned. "I am doing fine, thanks." I managed to say, my voice quieter than I intended. "Fine is not great, sis," Tyler replied with exaggerated concern. "And great is what you should aim for. Maybe if you took some risks professionally instead of staying at that tiny accounting firm, you could afford to live somewhere impressive too." I noticed Aunt Diana watching this exchange with narrowed eyes. She caught my gaze and gave me a questioning look, silently asking permission for something. I was not sure what she was planning, but at that moment I would have welcomed any interruption to Tyler's performance. "Tiny firm, tiny apartment," Tyler continued, warming to his theme. "You know what they say about thinking small. At least she has a stable job," one of our cousins offered, apparently trying to defend me, but only making me feel more pathetic. "Stability is overrated," Tyler declared confidently. "In today's economy, you have to be bold. Take chances, like this apartment. Sure, the rent is steep, but it is worth every penny for the lifestyle and connections it brings." I briefly considered simply getting up and leaving. I could text an apology to Diana, later claim a headache or early morning work. But something kept me glued to my seat. Perhaps it was simple stubbornness, or perhaps some part of me knew that this moment had been building for years and needed to play out. "Not everyone values the same things, Tyler," I said, finding my voice. "Some people prefer financial security over appearances." He waved dismissively. "That is just what people say when they cannot afford nice things." More laughter. More looks of pity directed my way. "When I was your age, our father said to me I had already bought our family home. Different generation, I suppose." "It is not generational," Dad, Tyler corrected. "I am only 3 years older than Sammy, and look at where I am living." The conversation had fully derailed from a toast to a public analysis of my supposed financial failings. I sat silently, feeling the familiar mix of hurt and anger that family gatherings often evoked. The careful boundary I had constructed between my private success and my family's perceptions was the only thing keeping me from standing up and revealing everything just to see the shock on their faces. But that boundary was about to be demolished by the last person I expected to cross it. The conversation around the table had shifted from my financial limitations to a broader discussion of career achievements. Tyler was detailing his recent work victory, describing how he had landed a major client through what sounded like a combination of happy hour drinks and promises his team might struggle to fulfill. "That is the thing about marketing," he explained to the rapt audience. "It is all about relationships and confidence. Technical skills like accounting," he nodded toward me, "will only take you so far. To really succeed, you need charisma." I pushed food around my plate, no longer hungry. Beside me, cousin Marcus was describing his ex-wife's unreasonable alimony demands, barely pausing for breath. Across the table, Aunt Diana was watching me with an intensity that made me slightly nervous. Samantha Diana called out during a brief lull, her voice cutting through multiple conversations. I have been meaning to ask you something. The table did not immediately quiet, but those nearest to us paused their discussions to listen. How is work going? Diana asked innocently. Still enjoying that accounting firm? It is going well, I replied cautiously, unsure of her direction. Busy season is approaching, but I enjoy the work. Diana nodded thoughtfully. And remind me, how many clients do you manage now? About 30 regular clients, plus seasonal tax work. That must keep you quite busy, she observed, and yet you still find time to manage your investment properties. A small silence began to spread around the table as people tuned in to our conversation. Tyler, who had been mid-sentence about his marketing prowess, paused and frowned slightly. I make time, I said carefully. Investment properties, our mother echoed, looking confused. What investment properties? Diana's eyes widened with theatrical innocence. Oh, I thought everyone knew Samantha has quite the impressive real estate portfolio. How many rental units do you have now, dear 5-6? All conversation had stopped. Every eye at the table was now fixed on me. 7 units total, I answered quietly. 4 condos, 2 duplexes, and the house. The house, Diana repeated with emphasis, turning to look directly at Tyler. That is right. Is that why you bought a 5-bedroom house in Oak Ridge Estates? As an investment? The silence that fell over the dining room was absolute. I could have heard a pin drop on those Brazilian hardwood floors Tyler had been so proud to showcase. My brother's mouth actually hung open, his next boast forgotten. Our parents stared at me, as if seeing a stranger. She rents an apartment downtown, Tyler finally said, his voice oddly flat. You must be confused. No confusion, Diana replied cheerfully. I helped Samantha with some of the investment paperwork last year. Beautiful property, 3,000 square feet if I recall correctly, with that gorgeous backyard and swimming pool. My mother set down her fork with a clatter. Samantha, what is Diana talking about? You own a house with a pool. I took a deep breath. The secret that I had guarded for years was now exposed in the most public and unexpected way possible. Part of me was horrified at having my privacy invaded, but another part felt a strange sense of relief, as if a heavy mask I had been wearing had finally been removed. Yes, I confirmed, meeting my mother's bewildered gaze. I bought it last year as an investment property. I have good tenants on a 2-year lease. But, how my father stammered, houses in Oak Ridge Estates cost. I know what they cost, Dad, I said quietly. I did my research before purchasing. Tyler had gone from shocked to red-faced. This is ridiculous. If you owned property like that, you would have mentioned it. You would be living there, not in some downtown apartment. The apartment is convenient for work, I explained, and living below my means allows me to invest more. Jessica looked between Tyler and me, clearly trying to process this new information. Wait, so you are wealthy? I winced at the bluntness of the question. I have made some good investments. Why would you keep this a secret? My mother demanded, sounding hurt. Your own family. Before I could answer, Tyler pushed back from the table. This is absurd. You are telling me that while I have been working my ass off for this apartment, you have been secretly buying up real estate, and you let me believe you were struggling. I never said I was struggling, I pointed out. That was your assumption. An assumption you never corrected. Tyler's voice had risen. You sat there tonight and let me make jokes about your tiny apartment when all along you have been what? Some secret real estate tycoon. Other guests were exchanging uncomfortable glances, clearly unsure whether to continue eating or excuse themselves from what had become an intensely personal family drama. Perhaps we should discuss this later, I suggested, acutely aware of the audience. No, let us discuss it now, Tyler insisted, since apparently my housewarming party is the perfect time to reveal family secrets. Diana cleared her throat. I apologize if I spoke out of turn. I genuinely thought everyone knew about Samantha's success. Well, we did not, our father said, looking at me with an expression I could not quite read. Our daughter has apparently been living a double life. It is not a double life, I protested. I just keep my financial matters private. Private from your family, my mother asked, her voice trembling slightly. We are supposed to share these things, Samantha. We celebrate Tyler's successes together. Yes, you certainly do, I murmured too quietly for her to hear. The awkwardness around the table was palpable. Several guests had stopped eating entirely while others made a show of focusing intently on their plates. Tyler remained standing, his face flushed with what seemed like a mixture of embarrassment and anger. How many other secrets are you keeping? He demanded. Is there anything else we should know about your mysterious double life? I met his gaze steadily. My investment strategy is not a secret, Tyler. It is just private. There is a difference. Jessica leaned forward, suddenly interested. So what is your net worth exactly, ballpark figure? Jessica, Tyler hissed. What, I am just curious, she defended herself. If your sister is some kind of financial genius, I want to know more. Other guests began murmuring among themselves. I caught fragments of their whispered conversations. Always so quiet about her work. Never would have guessed. 5-bedroom house in Oak Ridge. The evening had veered so far from the script I had expected that I felt almost dizzy. Years of carefully maintained privacy had been stripped away in a single moment, leaving me exposed in a way I had always feared. Yet alongside the discomfort was an undeniable sense of vindication. The look on Tyler's face when Diana mentioned my house had been worth years of sitting silently through his boasting. As the whispers continued and Tyler remained standing at the head of the table gripping the back of his chair with white knuckles, I knew the carefully maintained balance of our family dynamic had been permanently altered. What I did not yet know was whether this rupture would ultimately heal us or drive us further apart. The remainder of dinner was uncomfortable at best. Conversation resumed in fits and starts with guests making valiant but futile attempts to discuss neutral topics. Tyler had sat back down but barely touched his food, shooting glances my way that ranged from disbelief to outright hostility. Our parents seemed stunned, occasionally opening their mouths as if to ask questions, then thinking better of it. As dessert was being served, I volunteered to help in the kitchen, hoping for a moment of respite. I had just begun transferring cake slices to small plates when Tyler appeared in the doorway. We need to talk, he said flatly. Now. I nodded, setting down the cake server. Okay. Tyler closed the kitchen door behind him, leaning against it with arms crossed. What the hell, Samantha? All these years you have been what's secretly judging me while building some real estate empire. I have not been judging you, I replied evenly. And it is hardly an empire. Then, what would you call it? Diana made it sound like you are some kind of millionaire. I sighed. I have made good investments. I saved, aggressively lived within my means, and put money into properties that generate income. While letting everyone think you were barely getting by, Tyler's voice rose. Do you have any idea how condescending that is? To sit there silently while I tried to give you advice about money? About as condescending as you assuming I needed financial advice in the first place, I countered, feeling years of suppressed frustration bubbling to the surface. You have never once asked me about my financial goals or plans, Tyler. You just assumed I was failing because I was not broadcasting my success. The kitchen door opened, and our parents entered, concern etched on their faces. We could hear you from the dining room, our mother said. Everyone can hear you. Good, Tyler replied bitterly. Since apparently we are all about full disclosure tonight, let the guests hear it all. Our father closed the door firmly behind them. Samantha, is what Diana said true? About the house and the other properties. I leaned against the counter, suddenly tired. Yes, Dad, all true. But why would you keep this from us? My mother asked, genuine hurt in her voice. We are your family. The question hung in the air. It was the moment of truth, the opportunity to either maintain peace with a comfortable lie or speak the painful truth I had held inside for decades. Because you have never been interested in my successes, I said finally, my voice quiet but firm. My entire life it has been the Tyler show. His grades, his sports trophies, his college acceptance, his career. When I tried to share my achievements, they were either dismissed or used as a segue to talk about Tyler. Our mother gasped. That is not true. It is true, Mom, I insisted. When I made the dean's list 3 semesters in a row, you changed the subject to Tyler's internship. When I paid off my student loans early, Dad made a joke about how much more Tyler had to pay off for his more valuable degree. Those were just conversations, our father protested. We have always been proud of both our children. Have you? I challenged. When was the last time you bragged about something I did to your friends? When was the last time you called me just to ask how my work was going? You drive 4 hours to see Tyler's company softball games, but you canceled your visit to me last year because your neighbor was having a barbecue. Tyler had been watching this exchange with growing discomfort. This is not about who Mom and Dad love more, Samantha. This is about you being dishonest. I was not dishonest. I corrected him. I was private. There is a difference. Private, Tyler scoffed. You let me make a fool of myself tonight. You could have told me privately about your situation before I invited you to my housewarming. Would you have believed me? I asked sincerely. Or would you have accused me of making it up to compete with you? Tyler's silence was answer enough. The kitchen door opened again and Diana slipped in. I think I should be part of this conversation since I started it, she said, closing the door behind her. And before anyone yells at me, I want to say that I am sorry for springing this on everyone publicly. That was wrong of me. She looked at me apologetically. I thought they knew something, Samantha. The way Tyler was talking about your finances, I just assumed you had shared at least some of your success with them. It is fine, Diana, I assured her, though it was not entirely true. I was still processing my feelings about her revelation. While we are all here, Diana continued, turning to my parents, there is something you both need to understand. Samantha is not just doing well. She is doing exceptionally well. Her investment strategy is something financial advisors would charge thousands to develop. My parents looked at me with new eyes as if truly seeing me for the first time. How well, my father asked cautiously. I hesitated, then decided there was no point in partial truths now. My net worth is just under $1 million. My mother actually grabbed the counter for support. $1 million. But you are only 29. Almost 30, I corrected automatically. And yes, the real estate market has been very good to me, and I have made some successful stock investments as well. Tyler had gone pale. $1 million. And you live in that one-bedroom apartment, drive that basic Honda, wear clothes from mall stores. I live comfortably but modestly, I explained. Every dollar I do not spend on luxuries is a dollar that can generate more income through investments. But why? Tyler seemed genuinely baffled. What is the point of having money if you do not enjoy it? I do enjoy it, I said, just not in the way you would. I enjoy the security, the freedom it represents. I could quit my job tomorrow and still maintain my lifestyle for years. That kind of freedom is worth more to me than a fancy apartment or expensive clothes. Our father was shaking his head slowly. I just cannot believe we never knew. All this time you never asked, I pointed out quietly. You assumed I was struggling because I was not showing off. That says more about your values than mine. The kitchen had become uncomfortably warm with 5 people crowded into the small space. Through the door, I could hear the murmur of guests probably wondering what family drama was unfolding in the kitchen. We should return to the party, my mother said weakly. In a minute, I replied. I think we need to clear the air first. I turned to Tyler. I am sorry you found out this way. I should have told you about my investments directly, but I am not sorry for my success or for keeping it private. Not everyone needs public validation to feel accomplished. Tyler flinched at the implied criticism. Is that what you think of me? That I need constant validation? I think you and I are different people with different approaches to life, I said diplomatically. Neither is wrong, just different. So different that you could not share something this significant with your own brother. The hurt in his voice seemed genuine. You have never shown interest in my life, Tyler, I said gently. Our conversations are 90% about you. When would I have shared this? He opened his mouth to protest, then closed it again, perhaps realizing the truth in my words. Diana cleared her throat. For what it is worth, I think you are both successful in your own ways. Tyler has built a career he enjoys, and that affords him a lifestyle he values. Samantha has created financial security and independence. Different paths, different priorities. My mother's eyes had filled with tears. I had no idea you felt we favored Tyler. We have always been so proud of you, Samantha. You have a funny way of showing it, Mom, I replied softer now. I cannot remember the last time you introduced me to someone without immediately mentioning Tyler's latest accomplishment afterward. My father looked stricken. We never meant to make you feel less important. I know you did not intend it, I acknowledged. But intention and impact are different things. The kitchen door opened again and Jessica peered in. Sorry to interrupt, but guests are starting to leave and they want to say goodbye to the hosts. Tyler ran a hand through his hair. Tell them we will be right out. Jessica's eyes darted curiously between all of us before she withdrew. We should continue this another time, I suggested. Tonight is supposed to be about celebrating your new home, not hashing out family dynamics. Tyler nodded stiffly. Fine, but this conversation is not over. As we filed out of the kitchen to rejoin the party, I felt emotionally drained, but also strangely lighter. The secret I had carried for so long was finally out, for better or worse. The carefully constructed persona I had maintained around my family had cracked open, revealing the successful, independent woman I had become without their knowledge or support. The remaining hour of the party was a blur of awkward goodbyes and curious glances. Several relatives approached me with newfound interest, asking about my investment strategies and whether I might have advice for their own financial situations. Tyler moved mechanically through host duties, his earlier exuberance notably diminished. Our parents stayed close together, occasionally glancing my way with expressions I could not quite decipher. As the last guests were leaving, Tyler pulled me aside by the door. You know, he said quietly all those years, I thought I was the successful one. I thought I was ahead of you in life, in everything that mattered. I met his gaze steadily. Success is not a competition, Tyler. At least it should not be. Easy for you to say when you are winning, he replied with a shadow of his usual smirk. But there was no real malice in it. We are not done talking about this. I know, I agreed. But maybe next time we can start from a place of honesty. As I drove home to my modest apartment that night, my mind raced with everything that had happened. The exposure I had feared for so long had finally occurred, yet the sky had not fallen. There would be more difficult conversations ahead, more adjustments to the new reality where my family knew the truth about my financial success. But for the first time in years, I felt as though they might actually see me, not just as Tyler's little sister, but as Samantha, a woman who had built something significant on her own terms. The morning after the housewarming party, my phone began buzzing with notifications before I even got out of bed. Text messages from various family members expressed surprised curiosity and, in some cases, apologies for never having recognized my success. My parents had sent a joint message asking if we could meet for lunch the following day. Tyler had remained silent. I made coffee and scrolled through the messages, feeling a strange mixture of relief and anxiety. The secret was out, but now came the harder part, navigating relationships that had been fundamentally altered by the truth. Around 10 o'clock, Diana called. How are you holding up? She asked when I answered. Still processing, I admitted, curling up on my couch with my coffee. Part of me is relieved, but another part is terrified about what happens next. I owe you an apology, Diana said. I should never have blurted that out at dinner. It was your information to share when and how you chose. Why did you do it? I asked, not accusingly, but genuinely curious. Diana sighed. Honestly, I was tired of watching Tyler diminish you. Year after year, gathering after gathering, I have seen him build himself up by pushing you down with your parents enabling it. Last night, when he started in on your apartment and your supposed financial limitations, something just snapped. I thought about this. I cannot say I am entirely unhappy it happened. It was like lancing a boil that had been festering for years. That is a wonderfully gross but accurate metaphor, Diana laughed. Listen, can I take you to coffee this afternoon? I want to make sure you are really okay, and I could use your advice on some retirement planning anyway. We agreed to meet at 2 o'clock at our favorite cafe. After hanging up, I spent some time responding to the family messages, keeping my replies brief but appreciative. To my parents' lunch invitation, I agreed, but suggested we meet at my apartment first. It was time they saw how I actually lived. Diana and I spent 2 hours that afternoon talking through everything, the party, the aftermath, and what might come next for our family relationships. She also genuinely wanted advice on restructuring her retirement portfolio, which gave me a welcome distraction from personal matters. You know, Diana said as we were finishing our coffees, you could do this professionally. Not just accounting, but financial advising. You have a gift. I smiled. Maybe someday. For now, I am content with my current balance. The following day, my parents arrived at my apartment building looking nervous. I met them in the lobby and led them to the elevator. 14th floor, my father noted as I pressed the button. Must have a decent view. It does, I confirmed. When I opened my apartment door, I saw their eyes widen slightly. While not luxurious by any means, my one-bedroom apartment was far nicer than they had imagined. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline. The furnishings were simple but high quality, a mix of mid-century modern pieces I had carefully selected. Art from local artists adorned the walls. This is not what I expected, my mother admitted, turning slowly to take in the space. What did you expect? I asked, genuinely curious. Something smaller, my father said. Less put together. Tyler always described it as tiny. Tyler has never been here, I pointed out, gesturing for them to sit at my dining table. Would you like some coffee before we go to lunch? Over coffee, we began the conversation I had been both dreading and needing for years. My parents apologized for making me feel less valued than Tyler, though they insisted it had never been intentional. I explained how their consistent pattern of behavior had shaped my decision to keep my financial success private. We just never thought of you as someone who cared about money or career advancement, my mother explained. You were always so quiet about your work while Tyler would share every detail of his. I cared, I corrected gently. I just expressed it differently. And after a while, it seemed pointless to share when the response was always comparative. We failed you, my father, said, his voice rough with emotion. We should have paid more attention, asked better questions. I could have communicated better too, I acknowledged. Keeping everything secret was not entirely healthy on my part. The conversation continued over lunch at a nearby restaurant. We talked more openly than we had in years, perhaps ever. They asked genuine questions about my investment strategy, my properties, my goals for the future. I shared details I had kept close for so long, feeling the strange novelty of having my parents actually interested in my achievements. We would like to see your house, my mother said as we were finishing dessert. If you would not mind showing us. Of course, I agreed. It is rented out currently, but I can show you the exterior anytime. 3 days later, I received a text from Tyler asking if he could stop by my apartment that evening. I agreed, curious and slightly apprehensive about what he wanted to say. He arrived looking uncharacteristically subdued, wearing jeans and a simple button-down shirt rather than his usual designer attire. Nice place, he said after a cursory glance around. Different than I imagined. You have imagined my apartment, I asked, somewhat amused. I pictured something like my first post-college place. Cheap furniture, blank walls, maybe a houseplant slowly dying in the corner. He attempted a smile that did not quite reach his eyes. I offered him a drink, which he accepted, and we sat in my living room with an awkward silence between us. I talked to Mom and Dad yesterday, Tyler finally said. They mentioned they saw your house. From the outside, at least. I nodded. We drove by. The tenants are a lovely family with 2 children. They are taking good care of it. Tyler stared into his glass. I keep thinking about what you said, about me never asking about your life. You were right. I cannot remember the last time I asked you a real question about your work or goals or anything. It is a two-way street, I admitted. I stopped sharing because I did not feel heard, but eventually I stopped trying altogether. Another silence fell less awkward this time, more contemplative. I have always been jealous of you, Tyler said, suddenly surprising me. Even when I thought you were struggling financially. Jealous. Of what? Your certainty, he explained. You always seemed to know exactly what you wanted and how to get it. No drama, no second guessing. Meanwhile, I have changed career goals 5 times since college and still do not know if marketing is what I really want to do. I blinked, startled by this perception of me. I have plenty of doubts, Tyler. I just do not broadcast them. See, even your insecurities are dignified. He laughed softly. I guess I compensated by making sure everyone knew about my successes. If I talked about them enough, maybe they would feel more real. This vulnerability from my usually confident brother was disarming. For the first time in years, perhaps decades, I felt like we were having a genuine conversation rather than a performance. "Can I ask you something?" Tyler said. "Why did you buy that house if you do not live in it? What is the point?" I considered how to explain my philosophy in terms he might understand. It is like having money work for you instead of you working for money. The rental income covers the mortgage and provides additional cash flow. Meanwhile, the property is likely appreciating in value. When I eventually sell it, I will make a profit on both the monthly income it generated and the increased property value. Tyler nodded slowly. "And you figured this all out on your own?" "Books, research, financial forums," I explained. "I have always been interested in long-term financial planning." "Could you?" He hesitated. "Would you be willing to look at my finances sometime? Give me some advice?" The request was so unexpected, so counter to our established dynamic, that for a moment I was speechless. Tyler Bennett asking for my help rather than offering unsolicited advice. "I would be happy to," I said once I recovered, "but only if you are serious about making changes. Financial discipline is not always fun in the short term." "I am serious," he insisted. "Jessica and I have been talking about our future, maybe buying a place together eventually. I want to do it right." Over the following weeks and months, our family dynamics shifted in ways I never would have predicted. Tyler and I began meeting bi-weekly to review his finances and develop a saving and investment plan. He was surprisingly receptive to my advice, though, occasionally balking at suggestions to cut certain luxury expenses. Our parents made visible efforts to engage with me differently, asking thoughtful questions about my work and investments, rather than immediately pivoting to Tyler's latest news. It was awkward at times, this new pattern of interaction, but gradually it began to feel more natural. Diana watched these developments with satisfaction, occasionally reminding me that sometimes family secrets need the light of day to heal properly. While I was not entirely convinced that her dramatic revelation at the dinner party had been the optimal approach, I could not argue with the results. The most significant change, however, was within myself. For years I had defined success as something private, a secret scorecard I maintained while presenting a modest facade to the world. There had been a certain satisfaction in that hidden achievement, but also a loneliness I had not fully acknowledged. Now able to discuss my financial strategies openly with family and select friends, I discovered a sense of connection that had been missing. I began mentoring a few colleagues on investment basics. I even started a small blog sharing financial advice for young professionals, finding unexpected fulfillment in helping others develop their own paths to security. 6 months after the housewarming party revelation, our family gathered for dinner at a restaurant to celebrate our parents' anniversary. As we waited for our food, I noticed how different the conversation flow was from our gatherings of the past. Tyler still commanded attention with his animated stories, but he also asked questions of others and genuinely listened to the answers. Our parents distributed their interest more evenly among all topics. I found myself speaking up more readily, no longer feeling the need to minimize my contributions. "I have something to share," Tyler announced, as we were finishing our main courses. "Thanks to Samantha's advice, Jessica and I have saved enough for a down payment on a condo. We are closing next month." "That is wonderful news," our mother exclaimed. "Congratulations to both of you." "It is not a 5-bedroom house in Oak Ridge," Tyler added with a wry smile in my direction, "but it is a solid start, and we can actually afford it without stretching ourselves too thin." "The best home is one that brings security, not stress," I said, raising my glass in a toast. To security, Tyler agreed, raising his own glass. And to siblings, who keep us honest even when it hurts. As I drove home that night, I reflected on how thoroughly my life had changed in half a year. The weight of secrecy had been lifted, replaced by more authentic relationships with my family. Tyler and I would likely never be best friends. Our personalities and priorities were too different for that, but we had developed a mutual respect that had been absent for most of our lives. The truth I had feared for so long had ultimately set me free, not just from the burden of maintaining a false image, but from the constraints I had placed on myself by believing that success had to be hidden to be real. True success, I had learned, was not measured in dollars or property deeds, but in the ability to live authentically and build meaningful connections with others. Sometimes the most valuable investment is not in real estate or stocks, but in honesty. The returns may take time to materialize, but they compound in ways no financial investment ever could. Have you ever kept your success secret from family or friends? Drop a comment sharing your experience. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life stories about family dynamics. Share this video with someone who might be struggling with similar family situations. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the hardest conversations lead to the most important growth. Until next time.